Have you ever experienced something that made you question the very fabric of reality? A moment that felt off, like the world just glitched? You're not alone. From duplicated people to time loops that shouldn't exist, today we dive into the strangest, most unsettling real-life glitches in reality, stories that defy logic, bend time, and challenge everything we thought we knew about how the world works. Here are 10 of the most bizarre glitches in the Matrix that will leave you chilled to the bone. Story 1. The Vanishing Hotel Room. In the summer of 2003, two lifelong friends, Charlotte and Emily, both in their early 30s, set off on what was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. A scenic backpacking journey through the picturesque countryside of rural Spain. It was the kind of spontaneous adventure they had always dreamed about. No strict plans, no fixed hotels, just 2 passports, 2 backpacks, and a rental car snaking through winding roads, golden fields, and sleepy little towns tucked away from the modern world. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting everything in that soft golden hue, they came across a small wooden sign that read, "Posa de Luz Rooms and Meals." Intrigued and exhausted, they decided to check it out. What they found was charming. An old-fashioned countryside nestled between olive trees, with ivy climbing up its weathered stone walls. It looked like something out of a storybook. The innkeeper, a sweet elderly woman with silver hair and a warm smile, greeted them in Spanish and broken English. Her husband, equally kind, carried their bags up the creaky wooden stairs to their room. The room was modest. Antique furnishings, faded curtains, a squeaky ceiling fan. But it was clean and carried the comforting scent of lavender and wood polish. That night, they dined on homemade stew, crusty bread, and fresh goat cheese, all served in a cozy little dining room lit by candles and oil lamps. There was no Wi-Fi, no TV, just quiet, stars, and the feeling that they'd stumbled into a piece of the past. They slept soundly. But the next morning, as they packed to leave, Charlotte realized she'd left her grandmother's necklace on the bedside table, a family heirloom. They were already an hour down the road when she remembered. Frantic, they turned the car around and raced back. But when they arrived at the same spot, it was gone. Not just the inn. Everything. No driveway, no inn, no sign, no ivy-covered stone building. Only an open, overgrown field with wild grass swaying in the wind. It was as if the place had never existed. They were confused, then concerned, then genuinely disturbed. They drove around in circles, thinking they'd taken a wrong turn. They asked locals in the nearest town, but no one had ever heard of Posada de la Luz. When they described the elderly couple, one shopkeeper simply frowned and said, "No one's lived out there for over 40 years. The land is abandoned." Later, that night in their new hotel, Charlotte pulled out her camera to show Emily the photos from the evening before. They remembered taking pictures of the room, the food, even a selfie with the old woman. But the photos were gone. In their place were images of empty roads, blurry landscapes. A few selfies of the 2 of them in the car. No inn, no couple, no food. Not even the room. It was as if that one perfect night had been erased. They never found the necklace. They never found the inn again. And to this day, neither of them speaks about it unless asked. Charlotte once said, "It was like the universe made a mistake." Like we were given a glimpse of somewhere or someone that wasn't meant to exist anymore. And then it corrected itself. Was it a glitch in the Matrix? A slip through time? Or had they spent the night in a ghost building pulled from memory, dream, or something darker? Whatever it wasn't just a story. It happened. And the scariest part, it could happen to anyone. Story 2. The Repeating Child. It was an unusually warm spring evening in Seattle. Mark, a 32-year-old software engineer known for his logical thinking and love for routine, decided to take a different route home from work that day. His usual bus was delayed, and he thought a brisk walk through the quieter backstreets of Capitol Hill might help clear his mind. The streets were quiet. The sky was that soft shade of blue just before sunset, and there was a peaceful hum in the air, birds chirping, a dog barking in the distance, and the occasional breeze rustling through the trees. Then, the sound of a bell broke the calm. A small child, no more than 7, pedaled past him on a bright red tricycle. He wore a blue shirt, denim shorts, and mismatched socks. The kid looked directly at Mark, smiled wide, and rang the little bell on his handlebar twice. Ting ting. "Hi," the boy chirped, cheerful and innocent. Mark gave a small wave, chuckling to himself at the sudden nostalgia the moment sparked. It reminded him of the neighborhood he grew up in, back when kids still played outside until dusk. But 30 seconds later, things got strange. Mark turned a corner and there, coming straight toward him, was the same exact child. Red tricycle, blue shirt, same socks, same smile. Same ting-ting of the bell. Same hi. Mark slowed down, confused. He turned his head to look behind him. The kid who had passed was nowhere in sight. The street was empty. He turned forward again. The boy had passed him, cycling off into the distance again. He shook his head, trying to rationalize. Maybe there were 2 kids. Twins? He quickened his pace, making another turn, and there he was again. The same child, coming down the path like a ghost on a loop. Ting ting. Hi. Mark stopped walking. His skin prickled with goosebumps. He waited this time, let the kid pass, watched him ride down the sidewalk. And then Mark ran ahead, cutting through an alleyway, taking a shortcut to where the boy would eventually end up. And as he reached the next block, there he was again, smiling, pedaling, ting-ting. Hi. Now Mark was scared. His logical mind tried to piece it together. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe I'm tired. Hallucinating? No, this is real. He stood frozen on the pavement, his pulse in his throat. Then, from across the street, a jogger approached, mid-40s, sweaty, earbuds in. As he passed, he leaned in and muttered without stopping, "You're not crazy. I've seen it too." And just like that, he was gone. Mark never saw the boy again after that night. He took the bus home the next day, and every day after. But the image stays with him, that same looped smile, the tricycle's bell ringing like a clock glitching, repeating a moment that wasn't supposed to happen again. To this day, he refuses to walk alone at dusk. And when someone brings up déjà vu, he gets quiet. Because he knows what it feels like, not just to remember a moment, but to be trapped inside it. Was it a glitch in the simulation? Or a temporal loop leaking through the cracks of reality? Whatever it was real, and once you've seen something like that, you never look at the world the same way again. Story 3. The Doppelganger in the Mirror. Berlin, a city known for its art, its history, and its deep, restless nights. It was a cold Wednesday evening in November. The streets below Lena's dorm room were quiet, save for the occasional echo of a tram in the distance. She had just finished a long day of university lectures, caffeine-fueled library sessions, and walking through the damp autumn rain. Exhausted, she pulled her hair into a messy bun, slipped into her oversized hoodie, and shuffled into her small bathroom to get ready for bed. Just another night. The bathroom light buzzed faintly. Old fluorescent bulbs tend to do that and cast a harsh, white glow over the tiny room. The mirror above the sink was slightly cracked in one corner, but Lena never minded. She'd stared into it 1,000 times. She began brushing her teeth, humming softly to herself, some forgotten pop song stuck in her head, when something subtle, almost unnoticeable, changed. She paused, mid-brush. Her reflection had already stopped. She was still brushing, mechanically back and forth, but the girl in the mirror wasn't moving. She was just standing there, still, silent, and staring directly at her. Lena blinked, thinking she must be tired, maybe even half asleep. She leaned in slightly, toothbrush still in her mouth, and watched the mirror carefully. Suddenly, the reflection moved again, but something was off. The motion was wrong, delayed. Lena slowly lifted her left hand and gave a hesitant wave. The reflection followed, but not immediately. There was a pause, just long enough for Lena's stomach to drop. It wasn't a mirror anymore. It was something watching her, mimicking her, learning. She dropped the toothbrush into the sink and backed away, heart pounding in her ears. The reflection tilted its head just a little too slow, too deliberate. Without another second of thought, Lena bolted from the bathroom. She grabbed her phone, called her roommate Anna, who was down the hall, and demanded she come over. Minutes later, Lena returned to the bathroom, Anna by her side. The mirror looked normal. Their reflections stood there, side by side, like always. No lag, no delay. Anna laughed it off. You need sleep. Maybe cut down on the espresso too. Lena didn't argue, but something deep inside her knew that wasn't sleep deprivation. It wasn't stress, and it sure as hell wasn't caffeine, because it kept happening. Not every night, but just often enough. When she's alone, when the room is quiet, when the world is still, her reflection, her other self, begins to behave independently. Sometimes it blinks out of sync. Sometimes it smirks when Lena doesn't. And once, she saw it standing still even as she walked away. She now avoids mirrors whenever possible, covers them with scarves, keeps the bathroom light off, because she no longer believes her reflection is just glass and silver. She believes it's something else. A breach, a crack in the world, a doppelganger waiting for its moment. And she's not the only one. Online forums are filled with similar whispers. Stories from around the world. People seeing delayed reflections, mimics, faces that don't belong to them. What if your reflection isn't a copy, but a copycat? And what if one night it forgets it's supposed to stay behind the glass? Story 4. The luggage that time forgot. Carlos Mendez was no stranger to travel. As a seasoned logistics consultant for a multinational shipping firm, he had racked up thousands of air miles and checked into more hotel rooms than he could count. He was the kind of man who packed light, followed tight itineraries, and trusted nothing but facts. So when he landed in Buenos Aires for an international supply chain conference, it felt like any other trip. Smooth flight, standard hotel, same gray Samsonite suitcase he'd used for the past 5 years. But something was different this time. On his first evening at the hotel, Carlos was unpacking in his room, 4th floor, corner suite, warm yellow lighting filtering through tall curtains, when he noticed something odd wedged into the side pocket of his suitcase. A black leather pouch. He didn't recognize it. Confused, he unzipped it. Inside were 3 items. A handful of ancient, tarnished coins, a small, elegant pocket watch, ticking backwards, and a folded letter, written in what appeared to be his own handwriting. The paper was aged, faded, but unmistakably familiar, right down to the peculiar way he looped his G's and underlined key phrases. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. The letter was short. Carlos, do not go to Kale 9Y Libertad on the 22nd. You won't understand now, but you will if you ignore this. Don't be stubborn. It's not a joke. You. Dated July 17, 2071. He stared at it, his pulse quickening. Was this a prank? A prop? A psychological trick by a coworker? He called the front desk, asked if anyone had entered his room before check-in. They said no missing items reported, no unusual activity. He turned the watch over and over in his hands. The hands ticked counterclockwise, with a soft mechanical whisper. The seconds weren't in reverse. Time itself seemed to recede. Still convinced it was a joke, Carlos shrugged it off. Kale 9Y Libertad? He hadn't even planned to go there, but by morning, curiosity had taken hold. It was probably nothing. Maybe he'd find some clue there. A movie set, a crew playing an elaborate prank. He hailed a cab and headed toward the address. But as he neared the intersection, traffic stopped. Police cars. Yellow tape. People gathered. There'd been a freak construction collapse. A scaffold had failed above a narrow sidewalk. A passerby, a tourist, had been crushed instantly. Carlos stepped out of the cab in silent shock. The location matched exactly. The time of the accident, the same hour he'd planned to walk through that very spot. He never told anyone he had planned to be there. And when he returned to the hotel that night, he placed the pouch, the coins, the watch, the letter, deep into the back of a drawer in his suitcase. He still travels, still books hotel rooms, still walks past shops and busy streets without hesitation. But the pouch stays with him, locked away in the darkest corner of his closet at home. He's never shown it to anyone. He rarely even thinks about it. But sometimes, in the dead of night, he swears he hears a ticking sound from inside the drawer. And it's not ticking backwards anymore. It's ticking forward, counting down. To what? He doesn't know. And he's not sure he wants to find out. Story 5. The Living Room Loop. It was the winter of 2017 in suburban Melbourne, Australia. The air outside was still and cold, and inside her small townhouse, Priya Mehta was enjoying a quiet night alone. She'd just finished work. The sky had darkened early, and she was wrapped in a wool blanket, curled up on the living room couch, sipping tea and watching an old comedy show she'd seen dozens of times. The flickering blue light of the screen bathed the room in comfort, familiar, ordinary, peaceful. But what happened next would leave her questioning everything she thought she knew about the boundaries of time, space, and herself. Around 9:20 p.m., she stood up to grab a glass of water from the kitchen. Nothing unusual, just a quick moment away. The episode was still playing behind her as she crossed into the hallway. When she came back just 30 seconds later, she stopped dead in her tracks. There, sitting on the couch, was herself. Same hoodie, same leggings, same messy bun. Same blanket pulled up to her waist. Same remote in hand. Eyes locked on the screen. Frozen. Still. It was her. But she was still there. She was watching the show while she stood at the edge of the hallway, breath caught in her chest. For a split second, her mind couldn't process it. Was it a hallucination? A reflection? Her shadow? A dream? Then she blinked, and the couch was empty. Blanket folded, remote untouched. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty sofa, heart racing. Eventually, she laughed nervously, chalking it up to fatigue, maybe a trick of the light. But then it happened again. A week later. Same scene. She stood up to grab her charger from the other room, and when she came back, she was there again. Same pose. Same TV show. Same stillness. She didn't blink this time. She just stared. The figure didn't move. It wasn't doing anything unnatural. It was just watching, existing, quietly living out a moment she had already lived. The third time it happened, Priya walked slowly toward the figure. Her heart was pounding, but curiosity overpowered fear. She reached out. Her fingers passed through the shoulder. It was like air, but unnaturally cold. Sharp, like the way outside air feels just before snowfall. Then, gone. The couch was empty again. She started documenting the occurrences, checking times, patterns. It didn't happen every night. Only sometimes, but always the same loop. She leaves the room and walks back into a moment that's already happened. She tried explaining it to friends. A couple of them laughed. A few thought she was having anxiety episodes. One suggested it was a trauma response. No one believed her. And yet, it kept happening. She started leaving the lights on, keeping music playing in the background. Anything to break the silence. But the loops returned without warning. Eventually, she moved. A new city, a new job, a different apartment with no visual connection to the old one. And so far, the loops have stopped. But sometimes, when she leaves her living room, a chill passes through her spine. Not from the air, but from a sense, knowing that something might be sitting there, waiting, living a second behind her. And one day, it might not disappear. Story 6. The Staircase to Nowhere. In the summer of 2015, Jake Holloway, a seasoned forest ranger with over a decade of wilderness experience, was conducting a solo patrol in the remote highlands of Central Oregon. This particular region, a dense stretch of government-owned forest land, was known for its silence. No campsites, no trails, just miles of pine, moss, and wind. Jake wasn't easily rattled. He dealt with mountain lions, found lost hikers in the dead of night, and even once helped recover a crashed drone. But that day, something happened that would change the way he viewed reality forever. It started like any other patrol. The sun filtered softly through the canopy. The GPS device pinged every mile. Jake was inspecting a stretch of old forest near an area called Section 33, a place most rangers casually avoided. Not because of any official reason, but because things just felt strange there. A kind of unnatural quiet. Trees growing at odd angles. The way sound seemed to die out too quickly. That's when he saw it. In a small clearing, surrounded by untouched wilderness, was a perfect white staircase. Not a ruin, not debris. Just a clean, pristine, freestanding staircase, about 15 steps. Covered in no leaves, no dirt, no moss. Impossibly out of place. Like someone had cut a slice of suburbia and dropped it in the forest. There were no signs of construction around it. No footprints. No broken trees. No foundation. Just stairs. Jake froze. He approached cautiously, radioing his location back to HQ with vague language. Found an unusual structure. Might be abandoned equipment. He circled it once. Took photos. Touched the railing. It was ice cold, despite the heat. The closer he got, the quieter the forest seemed to become. Not peaceful, but hollow. Like sound was being drained out of the air. Something in him, something ancient and instinctual, told him not to climb it. But curiosity was stronger. He placed one boot on the bottom step. Then two. The moment he reached the fifth step, his head throbbed with sudden pressure, like diving deep underwater. The trees around him wavered, not physically, but visually, like reality itself shimmered. He staggered back down, heart racing. Seconds later, the air around the staircase rippled like heat waves, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone. No puff of smoke, no sound, no marks on the ground, just empty moss and silence. Panicked, he called in backup. Another ranger, Mitchell, arrived 45 minutes later. Jake tried to explain what he'd seen. Mitchell didn't ask questions. He just exhaled and said, "You saw one of the staircases, didn't you?" Jake was stunned. "One of them?" Mitchell looked him dead in the eye. "Don't talk about the stairs. Ever. We've all seen them. Just walk away next time." Later, Jake dug around quietly, carefully. He found online threads, deleted, archived. Mentions of lone staircases spotted in woods across the world. Maine, Indonesia, Sweden, northern Pakistan. Same story, no foundations, no purpose, and anyone who climbs past a certain step changes. Some hikers never came back. Some came back. Wrong. No agency has ever acknowledged them. No satellite images show them. But rangers, hunters, survivalists, they know. They say the staircases don't lead up. They lead away. Away from this timeline. From this version of reality. From rules we understand. And if you ever find one, don't climb. Don't touch. Just leave. Because some doors, even if they're made of stairs, should stay closed. Story 7. The Lost Family Photo. Julia Bennett had always been sentimental. A mother of 3 from the quiet suburbs of New Jersey, she filled her home with warm lighting, home-cooked meals, and memories preserved in glass frames that lined every hallway. Her favorite, a photo taken nearly a decade ago, a family trip to Paris. One perfect summer day beneath the towering shadow of the Eiffel Tower. In the picture, Julia stood smiling with her husband Michael, arms around their 2 children, Lucas and Ella, ages 6 and 4 at the time. They were laughing. The sky was a perfect blue, and behind them, the tower rose like a monument to joy. The photo had hung in the hallway for 8 years, undisturbed. Until one afternoon, everything changed. Julia was dusting the picture frames, just like she always did on Sundays, when she froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She leaned in closer. Her hands trembled. Because now, in that once familiar photo, there were 3 children. A young girl about 8 years old stood beside them, right next to Julia, with her small arm wrapped around Julia's shoulder like they belonged together. Same lighting, same shadows, same composition. But this girl was never there before. Her face was eerily familiar. Dark curly hair, soft eyes, wearing a pale pink dress. Smiling warmly, not awkwardly pasted into the scene, but perfectly blended, as if she'd always been part of that moment. Julia called out to Michael. He came, skeptical, until he saw it too. He blinked several times, then checked the back of the frame. Same photo lab stamp. Same handwritten date, June 14th, 2012. His voice dropped. Who is that? Julia shook her head. I don't know. They tore through old albums, checked cloud backups, scrolled years of digital folders. Every copy, physical or digital, now had the 3rd child in it. Same girl, same spot, same look. It was like reality had rewritten itself. Julia felt like she was losing her mind. She asked her mother, her sister, even Lucas and Ella, now teenagers. None of them recognized the girl. No distant cousins, no family friends, no forgotten foster child. There was no explanation. Then it got worse. She started dreaming about her. In the dreams, they weren't in Paris. They were at home. The girl was at the dinner table, laughing, playing with toys, calling Julia Mom. Julia would wake up crying. The grief was real, but for someone she'd never known. For weeks, the photo remained that way. The 3rd child, always smiling, felt like a ghost imprinted in ink. A reminder that something about her memory, her life, her timeline, had been tampered with. And then one morning, just like that, she was gone. Back to 2 children. No pink dress. No arm over her shoulder. Like she had never been there at all. Julia collapsed onto the floor when she saw it. Shaking, shivering, relief, mixed with unbearable loss. But the strangest part, she can't remember what the girl looked like now. The face in her dreams is gone. Her name, if it ever existed, has faded. There are no records, no traces, not even a shadow. Just a hollow ache. And the faintest feeling that somewhere, sometime, that girl was real. And the world, or whatever manages it, had simply deleted her. Story 8. The Clock That Stopped Time. Raymond Tucker, or just Ray, as no one called him but himself, had grown accustomed to silence. After retiring from his job as a postman in the outskirts of Toronto and losing his wife to cancer a few years prior, his days had become predictable. Quiet mornings with weekly evening walks, a crossword puzzle before bed, and the ever-present creak of the empty house around him. He wasn't unhappy, but he wasn't fully alive either. He missed the sound of someone calling his name from another room. So when he stumbled upon an antique grandfather clock at a neighborhood garage sale one Saturday morning, something stirred in him. It was tall, with ornate woodwork and golden hands locked at 4:17. The pendulum hung still, lifeless. "It doesn't work," the seller had said. Ray smiled. "That's okay. I just like how it looks." He brought it home, cleaned the dust, and placed it in the hallway near the kitchen. It became part of the scenery, like everything else in his home. Silent, decorative, frozen, until the night it ticked. It was precisely 4:17 a.m. Ray had gotten up for a glass of water, his slippers whispering softly on the wooden floor. As he passed the hallway, a sound pierced the stillness. Tick. Not a groan or creak. A clear, mechanical tick, sharp, cold, unmistakable. And with that single tick, everything stopped. The hum of the fridge ceased. The wind outside silenced. The dripping kitchen tap froze mid-drip, a tiny bead of water hovering in the air. Ray stood still, glass in hand. His dog, Lucky, was mid-bark in the living room, mouth open, suspended like a paused video. Time had paused. But Ray could move, think, walk, panic. He touched the floating water drop. It was solid, like glass. The light above flickered, and then froze mid-blink. Ray stood alone in a world frozen in place. Exactly 5 minutes later, without warning, the clock ticked again. Tick. The world resumed. Lucky barked. The water dropped. The hallway light flicked fully on. Everything carried on like nothing had happened, except Ray knew. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a stroke. It was real. It happened again the next night. 4:17 a.m., one tick. 5 minutes of silence. Tick. Reality resumes. He tried recording it. Cameras froze. He tried calling someone. The signal died. He tried unplugging the clock. It still ticked. Ray began losing sleep, afraid to move, afraid to breathe during those 5 minutes where the world forgot to turn. Finally, in desperation, he wheeled the clock out to the curb one rainy morning and left it there for garbage pickup. He felt relief, a strange sense of victory. The nightmare would end. But it didn't. Because now, the clock was gone, but the ticks continued. Every day, at exactly 4:17 a.m., his lights flicker once. A sudden hush descends on the house. His breath turns visible in the air. And for 5 long minutes, time holds its breath. He doesn't keep clocks in his house anymore, not even a wristwatch. He doesn't go out at night. He doesn't tell anyone, not the neighbors, not his doctor. Because deep down, he knows. The clock never needed to be in the house. It was never broken. It was never just a clock. And now, for reasons he may never understand, time belongs to him.